Now let's look at our homework. Part 1. When the checkbox is checked, mark the corresponding thing as completed. Be sure this gets synced to Firebase and persists across page refreshes. Now that second bullet to me just means test this thing after you do it. By the way, remember that the README is in a format called Markdown. So when I say underscore completed, that's because when you look on GitHub, the word completed will show up in italics because of those underscores. I'm not intending for you to necessarily name the field underscore completed underscore, just so you know. Where do we even start, man? This sounds intimidating. First of all, where's the checkbox? Which component is the checkbox in, Jung-un? Let's see. This checkbox here. It's probably an add thing button, right? No, it's not an add thing button. It's in the individual thing, actually, right? Because there's more than one of them, right? There's only one list, but there's lots of things. So it's in thing. Let's look at thing.js, which I conveniently already have open. What do you know? Almost like I planned this. So there's the checkbox. Input type checkbox, value equals on. So what do I do about that? What can I do with that? Something needs to happen when that changes, right? So we used onChange already on content editable. Hopefully onChange is a thing on checkboxes too. I bet it is. Seems like it would be. They can change. Now value is not something that we really need. Type checkbox, let's say onChange. Let's just say anything for right now. Check. Open up our console. Yay, it says check. Yay, it says check. All right. So onChange event handler, we're all over those. What do we really want to do? We want to make an update to our actual thing, right? Which lives in state. We're hoping that by changing state, we just get the Firebase syncing for free. So if we're going to add a new property to thing, where do you think we should start? Who feels good about their solution to the homework? All right, Akash. Let's go to app.js. Okay, so we have our thing method, which returns a blank thing that gets called every time that we click the add thing button. It has an ID and a name. So we need to add a property to store whether the checkbox is checked, right? I'm treating this thing like a to-do list for our purposes, so I'm going to call that field completed. It should describe what this thing means. So completed works for me. And you could default it to true if you want. I'm going to default it to false, because I'm probably not going to add a brand new thing to my to-do list if it's already done. Sometimes I might, just to impress somebody, like, look, see, look, I've been working on my list. So add completed false. And now we see some of why I go ahead and put the comma there, so that when I add this, there's no chance that I'm going to get an error because I forgot the comma on the line before. And also, when I look at my git diff before I commit, it only shows one line is changed. So when someone looks through my history, they're not going to see that 2 lines changed, because the only change on that other line would have been adding a comma. And that just clutters things up. And yes, these are real problems that real people have. Okay, so now the field's there. Now we just need to make this checkbox actually reflect that. So you probably had to look up how this works. Who else feels good about their solution? Ivan, what do you think? How do I make this checkbox actually reflect the value of that thing?
So I just kind of did something that was similar to update name. I just did on change equals to this update completed.
Okay. So we have update name up here. You could also have update completed. And this is going to change it. I'm not quite worried about changing it just yet, but let's go ahead and let's at least move our console log in here, and I'll say update completed so I know that it worked. Change this from this to update completed. Now that kind of because that makes it sound like there was an update and that update just finished. I'm gonna tweak this name just a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that name at all. I'm gonna call it toggle completed just because it's a Boolean. Or toggle completion might be even better. Then there's no confusion that this means, oh, this is telling me that the toggle has finished. No, completed is the name of the field. So if I say toggle completion, I think it's just a tiny bit less ambiguous. Not a problem with the other name, just the name I'm going to go with. But before we do that, and where did I, let's see. Right. This dot toggle completion, because this is a class. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Yep, it does it. Let's go ahead and change this to defaulting to true, just so we can check to make sure that the state of the checkbox actually matches whether that's true or false. So how do we do that part? Who knows? Okay, so yeah, we want to bind this input's checked state to the value that we're storing on the thing, right? How? Input has a checked property. That works. We can use that. There's another way that works on more types of inputs, so I'm going to show you that way. It doesn't just work on checkboxes and radio button, and again, there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. Well, in fact, it's still the same thing actually. So what is the name of that property? Okay, so in the DOM, it's just called checked. In React, when you bind something like that, sometimes if you just use the DOM properties, things get a little goofy after a while. So if I look out here at the React documentation, controlled components. So here we go. In HTML, form elements such as input text area and select typically maintain their own state and update it based on user input. In React, mutable state is typically kept in the state property of components and only updated with set state. We can combine the two by making the React state be the single source of truth. Then the React component that renders a form also controls what happens in that form on subsequent user input. So that's a little complicated, but the point is, we want any changes to state to be reflected on this thing, but we also want to be able to change it. So you can say value equals this.state.value. You can also say default value if you want to be able to change it yourself. So you could say checked or default checked. If we use default checked, let's see, we have a default value, not on this page. I should pull up a different page of the documentation, so I'll hunt that down later. So you just use checked, and that worked fine? Okay, just like the one on content editable, right? So checked may work, but it may break down at some point in the future. So default checked is a slightly better option here. So this is specific to React. It's a JSX attribute. It's not in real HTML. So if we put thing completed there, and we don't have to pass any new props down, right? We already have the thing, and we saw to it that completed is on everything. Save that. Now these two that we already have they don't have a value for completed, so they're undefined, so that's falsy. But if I add a new one, notice it's checked initially, because that's now the default. Put a value here. Yep, it's already got the strike through. Go out to Firebase. Not that version of ThingList. Which version of ThingList is this anyway? Oh, yeah, it's not syncing right now. Something's. This is the wrong list. This is totally the wrong list. Rats. I'm messing with the afternoon stuff. Darn it. Oh well. So if I switch over to ThingList afternoon, now I see thing 1, thing 2, and thing 3, and thing 3 completed is true. Now, as I said, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to default them to true, so we'll default it to false. But the point is it reflects the value true or false. So now, if I add another one, it's not checked. But if I check one of these, I get this update completed. Doesn't actually persist yet, right? So it'll reflect the value if the value's already there. It's already in state, but we're not updating state yet. We haven't implemented the one that Akash told us about. So toggle completion, I'm guessing is going to look a whole lot like update name. Agreed? Let's see here. Looks like the difference is really just that this is completed. And what'd you use as the value? ev.target.checked. I can dig it. See what happens. Check this one. Refresh the page. Yep, the change persists. Uncheck thing 3. Refresh the page, and it's still unchecked. So I think we did it. Persist thing completion.